This is the Behind the Line podcast, coming to you from the wacky left coast capital of Seattle. News from the Pacific Northwest, the left coast, the U.S., and the world that matters. The stories the MSM won't talk about. Deciphering the truth through all the lies. For more, visit BehindTheLinePodcast.com.
The United States government is illegitimate. Look at the actions of the government over the last several years and ask yourself if this government is for the citizens of the United States. This clown in office isn't even for the people who voted for him. A senile, confused, elderly professional liar with a drug-addicted son who brought cocaine into the White House and snorts it off the ass of a prostitute. A lifelong politician who showered with his teenage daughter. That's our president. This administration has stripped away our rights, sown division, promoted wars, pushed inflation to an all-time high. It allows criminals and violent behavior to go unpunished, left our border wide open and unprotected, allowed the unfettered access of illegal aliens into the country. They provide these illegals with your tax dollars and housing, when so many citizens and veterans are in need. They've tried to strip states of their own rights to govern themselves. They've allowed crime to skyrocket and have supported policies to limit punishment and incarceration of violent criminals. They've sent billions of your tax dollars overseas to pay for war, to support other countries and protect their borders while Americans suffer. They've limited access to energy for Americans. They've promoted immoral behavior and shoved it in your face and down your throat. They've pushed for your children to be indoctrinated in the public school system and have promoted groupthink rather than individual expression or success. They forced you to take unproven vaccines under the threat of losing your job, closed private businesses, and destroyed the American way of life. They constantly push the narrative of fear with the help of the complicit American media, fear of each other, fear of war, fear of disease, fear used to control you. The criminal justice system under the Biden administration has become an absolute joke, federally and locally. They have strategically placed extremely liberal prosecutors and judges in key areas of many states. The result is to have violent and dangerous criminals on the streets instead of behind bars where they belong. In places like Seattle and other liberal hellholes like LA, Chicago, New York, they want to close jails. They want no incarceration for juveniles convicted of any kind of crime, including murder. They refuse to prosecute juvenile violent offenders, or adults for that matter. We see the news stories time and time again of violent felons with 20, 30, 40, 50 or more arrests. We all know they shouldn't have been on the streets reoffending, and we tolerate this. Why? Meanwhile, they are trying to tell you that you can't have firearms, that the Second Amendment doesn't exist. A judge literally said that recently. They're trying to make sure you can't protect yourself and your family. Doesn't it seem appropriate that a felon would be elected president of the United States? And that trial, what a joke. The star witnesses were a disgraced, disbarred lawyer who is a known liar and a prostitute. If this doesn't prove what a circus the criminal justice quote-unquote system has become, I don't know what does. Everyone has a police, they had to be somewhat credible and to prosecute a case. I guess that's all drawn out now. The courts are now just a bastion of injustice, place political opponents. Police say it's easier to go Americans think or act the way the government deems appropriate. Meanwhile, these politicians break laws, lie, cheat, and use their office for their personal gain, becoming rich as a course work to follow. The millions of laws that these leaders have to keep you under control. They want African force, demonizing them, investigating them, all while in group and BLM to run wild through the streets, burning and destroying property. They're making sure criminals have more right than you, more protection than you, that you should just give up your property as a criminal get more than you. If you protect yourself, you may be the one who gets charged and goes to jail. If someone squats in your home, the property you own, the government may give it to them because they have rights and you don't. You are just a slave to the federal government. The days of chains are gone. The days of slavery based on color are gone. Now it's warfare, class slavery, and you are in the class, wealthy class. They keep you cold, liable law regulations you must somehow abide every minute of your life, or the taxes they strap you with. Makes the to either engine from core housing. You have to work to home scrape, and they expect you to smile, be thankful. They want you out of work. And government says how saying just enough to survive, just enough so you can't caught a bit of air, trapped. The days of the American dream, owning a home and having a family, are over. They're allowing foreign entities and governments to purchase American land and homes. It takes at least 2 incomes for most people and families to make it. Even then, 41.1 million people are on food stamps every month. 12.3% of the population. Homelessness has skyrocketed the bonus. They sit there with their pompous attitudes, tell you enough. You're not hurting. It's not that bad. There's no inflation. Crime is not bad. There's plenty of jobs. You can afford it. Don't see what you see with your own eyes. Come on, man. Be it next week, the lockdowns and restrictions that will come with that. They don't care about you or your children. They don't care if you serve this country. They don't care about anything but themselves. This country is run by a bunch of sociopathic narcissists, and you are their abused partner. They've convinced you you're wrong. They're right. They know what's best for you. You're just crazy for thinking anything other than what they tell you. Most of the population is trauma bonded in a sense to this belief. The media perpetuates these lies and the population just falls into line. I think it's clear to anyone paying attention that this just can't continue. We are headed for a breaking point. Our Rome is burning moment. Whether that's internally, terrorism, financial collapse, some other major event, or a large-scale war, you better be ready. If you think this pathetic government is going to do anything for you, you are sadly mistaken. Even in better times, look at the response time and lack of response to major events. How long people had to wait for help. Do you honestly think this administration is capable of getting help out to people who need it? Or that they even want to? Just like insurance, you better have all the things you need to sustain yourself. I would start with 2 weeks worth of supplies, then a month, then 3 months, then 6, until you have a year's worth of supplies. Food, water, or a way to filter or treat water, and whatever else you need to have to get by on your own. If we have an event where power and or services are off for any length of time, let me tell you why I think it will be worse than any book or movie portrays it. First of all, you have an inept population that can't do anything for themselves. They rely on others, whether that's friends, family, social workers, the government, or someone else to help them manage their daily lives. They have no real skills. They aren't self-reliant. They have no idea how to do basic things required to survive outside of going to a grocery store or turning the tap water on. Not only do they have no real skills, but they also have no ability to manage their emotions and, as you know, are easily affected by every little thing that goes on around them. There is little or no resiliency. Second, by the numbers, as I stated already, 41 million people are already on food assistance and can't manage to provide for themselves. 57.8 million adults, 22.8% of the population have a mental illness. That's 1 in 5 people. 1 in 25 have a serious mental illness like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or major depression. 46.8 million Americans are addicted to drugs. 131 million Americans take prescription drugs. There's no way to know how many would die without their medication, but you can bet that it's a pretty high number. 38.4 million Americans are diabetic. What's going to happen when these people don't get their food assistance? How about the mentally ill who can't get their medication or talk to their therapist? Or when 46.8 million addicts can't get their fix anymore? You're literally going to have millions of mentally ill and drug addicts roaming the streets looking for a way to get what they need. Do you think they're just going to politely ask or go away when you say no? Many of these people will become violent. The 131 million who can't get their prescription drugs that are primarily made in India, 48%, and China, 13%. China could literally cut us off from medications at any time. Any supply chain interruption could mean that medications can't be shipped from overseas. India is also a member of BRICS, which is the recently formed trade union with Brazil, Russia, China, South Africa, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE. This union is meant to challenge the West's control over trade and to stop using the American dollar for the said trade. Most of these countries are not friends of the US, and we could easily be cut off if they decided to put the squeeze on us. BRICS is growing and more countries are looking for membership, including Saudi Arabia. This trade group contains 45% of the world's population, so dismissing this as nothing would be a mistake. Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE produce 44% of the world's oil. Of course, the US has enough of its own oil to be energy independent, but fools in office have blocked our ability to use our own resources, making us reliant on foreign adversaries. Third and last, if you live in an apartment building or densely populated city, have a plan to leave. This idea that you will be able to survive or prep for a long-term situation in those locations if services go down will get you killed. You're going to have hundreds or thousands of desperate, hungry, mentally ill, and or drug-addicted people in your general area that you will have to contend with. On top of trying to store enough supplies, how are you going to get water? The water will go off. How will you provide heat in winter? New homes aren't even built with fireplaces anymore. How will you cook or have light? Bathrooms, the sewers will stop working and back up into your home or apartment. It will only take one idiot, and as I've already explained, there are lots of them, to accidentally or purposely start a fire and burn your apartment building down. If services are down, that probably means no police or fire department. I worked for both for many years, and I can tell you, every day thousands of people call 911 because they seem to be incapable of doing or handling anything on their own. These people are going to be completely lost, sent into a panic. How are you going to deal with that? How are you going to deal with criminals and gangs? Don't tell me you'll fend them off with your gun. You'll be outnumbered and probably outgunned. Eventually they will get you. Being in a city, especially an apartment building, is indefensible, unsustainable. Have a plan to leave. Go somewhere away from the city, somewhere safe. Preppers who tell you that you can city prep are doing you a horrible disservice. Listening to them and any idea that most people will pull together after whatever happens is utterly foolish. I'm telling you, based on over 20 years of experience, that people are a lot worse than you want to believe. There is a very thin veil of civility that law enforcement and maybe the threat of jail time holds together. When that is gone, all bets are off. Much of this is out of your control. What you can control is a plan for yourself and your family. You can prepare, and by that I mean food, several months to a year's worth minimum, water, a way to purify, carry, or store it, shelter, light, heat, self-protection, and then other needs or necessities. So many prepper channels want to show you all the cool gear and gadgets and guns, stuff that costs thousands of dollars, all the name brand gear that costs hundreds or thousands of dollars. That garbage isn't necessary. Food and water are critical, and right now you still have time to get it and store it relatively cheaply. Stop relying on other people to manage your life, emotions, and problems. Learn to be self-reliant. Learn some real skills. Get yourself off medications if that's safely possible. Be healthy in your mind, not just your body. You aren't owed anything, so stop thinking like that. Don't worry about the things you can't change and focus on what you can. What you can do for yourself. All empires fail, and this will be no exception.
Thanks for listening to the Behind the Line podcast. For more, visit behindthelinepodcast.com, leftcoastnews.net, or shtf.net. Please subscribe, like, and share to get our content out there. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, Truth Social, Gab, Telegram, Substack, Brighteon, Rumble, the Newscaster Studio, and all other forms of social media. Thanks for listening.